Hey guys, welcome back, it's Meg. Today we are going to be going over the Mistweaver Celestials and how they work. I've done one of these videos in the past, but it's time for an update, so if you're new to Mistweaver, our Celestial is referring to our main cooldown. You can pick between Yulon the Jade Serpent and Jade the Red Crane. Your decision is reliant on the content that you're doing, but this guide is just for teaching you how to use each of them. There's a lot more than meets the eye with each of these cooldowns, so we're going to break it down in a way that makes them less daunting. If you're brand new to Mistweaver and are unfamiliar with the basic rotational abilities, I would highly recommend taking a second and looking at those in the spellbook and talent tree before continuing this video. I will go more in depth with the interactions and the reasoning behind the ramps and such in the full raid and Mythic Plus guides, and those will come out in early 10.2. In this video, we will go over the basics of each Celestial and the things that they share, where the healing is actually coming from when it comes to the Celestial or the player, as well as any additional effects and the rotation for each cooldown. Even though the Celestials are a choice between Yulon the Jade Serpent and Jade the Red Crane, they do share some talents and similarities when it comes to the whole mechanic of each of these. Both Jade and Yulon work with the Celestial Harmony talent, which means two things. One, when you use the Celestial, it will trigger Chi Cocoons. These are small absorb shields that will scale off of the caster's health pool. And number two is when you cast Enveloping Mist, your target and 4 nearby allies will be affected by Enveloping Breath, which is a bit of a hot as well as a healing amp for the Mistweaver. Invoker's Delight is something that will work with both Celestials as well. It is a capstone talent that is really only seen in raid since you can't access it with the Phalanx Stomp talents for keys. It's a simple haste increase during Celestial, and the duration is dependent on whether or not you have Jade Bond or Gift of the Celestials talented. Secret Infusion is interactable with both Celestials as well, although it is not tied strictly to them. You will typically be using it for your setup for both Celestial cooldowns. This is a passive effect that is coupled with Thunder Focus Tea, and you just get to pick a % stat based on the ability that you use when Thunder Focus Tea is active. Now the big one that is the most impactful for the Celestial cooldown is the choice between Jade Bond and Gift of the Celestials. Jade Bond is the 3-minute version of the spell that also has a cooldown reduction component and a % increase on either Chi-Ji's Gust of Mist mechanic or Yulon's Soothing Breath mechanic. Gift of the Celestials is a simple cooldown reduction, but it also reduces the duration of the ability. So your choices here are a longer cooldown, longer duration with a heal increase, or shorter cooldown and shorter duration, which means you will get more frequent use. So when it comes to the decision on which combination to use, you do have a few options. Yulon has no mastery component, and the Soothing Breath from Yulon is extremely minimal, so you are never going to be running Jade Bond with Yulon. It is also a much more expensive cooldown, as you'll see once we get into the rotation, and it's unrealistic to be able to effectively use a Jade Bond Yulon with our mana restrictions. Yulon is always paired with Gift of the Celestials and is currently the most popular raid build. It allows us to ramp on a shorter cooldown without overextending our mana, and due to other talents' influence, it allows us to provide raid-wide healing even beyond the duration of the Celestial itself. Chi-Ji can be used with either Jade Bond or Gift of the Celestials. Typically, if you're running Chi-Ji in raid, you're going to take Jade Bond as it provides the healing increase, and you also have the cooldown reduction off of Chi-Ji's Gust of Mist, which with the right talents and target count, you can get up to as much as 60 Gusts of Mist with just a few globals. This means you can get the cooldown on Jade Bond Chi-Ji extremely low, potentially even lower than the Gift of Celestials in the right circumstances. Chi-Ji with Gift of the Celestial provides a more consistent throughput in Mythic Plus situations specifically, as it's available pretty much every pack if needed, as well as not requiring as much time to effectively triage due to a smaller group size. Jade Bond in Mythic Plus currently shows promise, but it will depend on the dungeon, the affixes, comfort route, as well as the acceptance that you're going to have an inconsistent time on that cooldown. And then lastly, I would not recommend taking Yulon in keys. Chi-Ji can do everything that Yulon can do, plus more. Now we are going to get into each specific Celestial, starting off with Chi-Ji. This is the more complex of the two and can be used in a few ways and is overall a very versatile Celestial. This is primarily used in Mythic Plus, but is occasionally used in Raid, especially in Heroic raiding or the early Mythic bosses. The Celestial works by building and spending Teachings of the Monastery stacks in order to trigger Mastery Healing, and build stacks of Chi-Ji the Red Crane to then spend through Enveloping Mist, which triggers the Celestial Harmony effects that we talked about earlier. The player healing is mostly coming from our setup before we even push Chi-Ji. This is our Essence Font Hot for the double Mastery proc, our Renewing Mist either from Rapid Diffusion or from regular Renewing Mist application, our Enveloping Mist to trigger the Celestial Harmony portion of the cooldown, which in turn triggers a Gust of Mist from the player, our Ancient Teachings from using Essence Font for the hot, as well as from the damage that we're going to be dealing during the cooldown, and then Awakened Feline, which isn't present in the normal single target rotation, but it does occasionally have use in Mythic Plus. The healing from Chi-Ji is where most of the throughput is going to be coming from during this cooldown. On use, we have the Celestial Harmony, which is our Chi Cocoons. We have a Gust of Mist, which is triggered by Blackout Kick and is also Mastery based but comes from the bird instead of the player. And then we have our Enveloping Breath, which triggers when using Enveloping Mist. Chi-Ji also has some additional effects like the anti-root and anti-snare effect, and this means you cannot be slowed below your normal movement speed. Again, this is mostly relevant in Mythic Plus as there tends to be more movement and pairing effects, but sometimes it can negate entire mechanics, including the damage that it deals. I do have a sheet each season where I keep track of the abilities like Chi-Ji and Tiger's Lust, how they work with dungeon mobs and spells from Mythic Plus and how they interact, as well as diffuse magic and if you can reflect the damage, so I will have that linked in the description. Another effect that Chi-Ji provides is the percent of mana reduction per stack of Red Crane for Enveloping Mist. You don't always have to force stack of Teachings of the Monastery to benefit from this, but you can have a Chi-Ji rotation while using very little mana throughout the cooldown. Taking a look at our rotation for Chi-Ji, we're going to look at our setup first. We will want to have 4 stacks of our Teachings of the Monastery buff. These are stacked through Tiger Palm use. If you are using the Feline talents, you should only need to Tiger Palm twice, as it does strike twice when using Awakened Feline. And if you are not using those talents, then you will need to use Tiger Palm 4 times. You will also use Thunder Focus Tea with Renewing Mist for haste. This is Secret Infusion that we talked about earlier, but you do want to have that haste going into the cooldown. You will then want to use Essence Font for the heal over time and to trigger our Ancient Teachings buff. And lastly, use Feline Stomp to gain Ancient Concordance and Awaken Feline. Feline Stomp does trigger our Ancient Teachings as well as apply the Essence Font hot, but if you are wanting to make sure that you hit everyone in your party, you're going to have a much easier time just using Essence Font to apply that hot. There's also an opportunity for us to use Upwelling in this build, so you do have that access as well, and in which case you would use Thunder Focus Tea with Essence Font. You would still get the haste buff, but you would also spend much less time casting that 18 stack Essence Font. This is the single target rotation for Chi-Ji, and this is for after our initial setup. We will use the cooldown and then spend the Teachings of the Monastery stacks that we built beforehand to trigger our Gust, as well as build Red Crane stacks to get our Enveloping ready. We will use Enveloping Mist and then Rising Sun Kick to extend those hots. Now that we're starting from scratch but still in Chi-Ji, we're going to use Tiger Palm twice and then spend those stacks of Blackout Kick again, and then spend our Red Crane stacks through Enveloping. If you get a reset on your Rising Sun Kick, you should be prioritizing that over Tiger Palm. And then the last bit you can just use and repeat until you run out of Ancient Teachings, in which you then use Thunder Focus Tea with Essence Font to refresh the hot for Mastery and to trigger Ancient Teachings again. You can then continue the rotation with Rising Sun Kick onwards until Chi-Ji is over. This is the duration for a Jade Bond rotation, but when you are running Gifts of the Celestials, it is half the amount of time in the cooldown, so when you end up losing your Ancient Teachings buff, that is just going to be the end of Chi-Ji, and you can continue the rest of your normal gameplay. For multiple targets during Chi-Ji, it is basically the same rotation, except we are cutting out our Tiger Palm use, and you are still going to just be alternating between Blackout Kick, Enveloping Mist, and Rising Sun Kick. This rotation stays the same if you are using Gift, and again, you are just not going to have Chi when it comes time to refresh your Ancient Teachings, and you can just go back to normal. The single target rotations for both Gift and for Jade Bond are focused mostly on getting a free Enveloping Mist out to cover the party with Enveloping Mist and Renewing Mist through Rapid Diffusion, and then extending the HOTS with Rising Sun Kick through Rising Mist. Mastery procs will be a lot weaker on single target just due to the fact that you can't benefit from the cleave and you have less chances to trigger them. The AoE rotations for both are more focused on getting as many gust procs as you can. As you're cleaving off of multiple targets, it is also easier to build stacks of Red Crane. You're going to get chunkier heals and more healing in general due to the cleave and gust through Ancient Concordance. You still want to extend your HOTS through Rising Sun Kick, but your goal shifts as well as the rotation when you have access to multiple targets. This is mostly a Mythic Plus thing, but there is occasionally council bosses in Raid where this could be used. And there are times during Chi-Ji with Gift of the Celestials that you may have enough targets to just use Spinning Crane Kick and utilize your Awakened Feline healing, and then spending the free Enveloping Mist from Chi-Ji stacks on every third Spinning Crane Kick used. This is more of a maintenance style of healing, but with a short cooldown like Gift, you can be more flexible with it, especially in Mythic Plus. The thing with this cooldown in Mythic Plus is that it is much better to be flexible than optimal, since you are never going to have optimal situations in keys. So when it comes to Chi-Ji and deciding whether or not to use Tiger Palm or skip the Tiger Palms altogether, it really depends on the type of damage you're taking. If you're taking constant rot damage, you're going to want to be spending your Blackout Kicks as much as you can to get those Enveloping Mists spread on everybody. But if you're taking more chunkier damage or tantrum type damage where it is AoE every couple of seconds, then you may want to rely more on the gust. So unfortunately for Chi-Ji, the answer for keys is really it depends, but that is the best answer that I can give, and you will get a better feel for it just as you do more keys. When it comes to Yu'lon, this is a much more simple ability and has less variety in its rotation. For the player healing, we once again have Essence Font, our Renewing Mist, our Enveloping Mist, our Gust of Mist, which is our Mastery, and then we have the addition of Soothing Mist, Vivify, and Invigorating Mist, which is also commonly referred to as Vivify Cleave. The player healing is coming from a mix of the setup before Celestial and the actual Vivify ramp after our Celestial. For the Yu'lon healing, we once again have our Chi Harmony, which is Chi Cocoons, which is the small absorb shield on use, and then the Enveloping Breath from using Enveloping Mist, and that is the same as Chi-Ji. The difference is that Yu'lon, it is much more casting focused and is going to facilitate and buff the player healing rather than provide its own as Chi-Ji does. Yu'lon is only used with gifts, so the rotation is a lot more simple and it does not change on single target versus AoE. The only additional effects that Yu'lon provides are the reduced mana cost for Enveloping Mist during the cooldown. Our setup for Yu'lon is just our Thunder Focus Tea with Renewing Mist for haste, given through Secret Infusion, and making sure that both stacks of Renewing Mist are used. One of them is going to be from that Thunder Focus Tea, and the other is just going to have been the stack that you were sitting on or that you got during this time, and then just extending those with Rising Sun Kick before pushing Yu'lon. When we actually use the cooldown, we are going to be using Enveloping Mist 4 or 5 times depending on the spread of the group. This is to spread the Enveloping Breath, as well as using the Renewing Mist from Rapid Diffusion to cleave and then heal using Invigorating Mist. You're going to extend those Enveloping Mists with Rising Sun Kick, and then you're going to pick your target for your Soothing Mist and spam Vivify until Rising Sun Kick has come off of cooldown. Most of the healing during Yu'lon is actually coming from the player, but again, Yu'lon is helping us get high Renewing Mist counts, as well as that Enveloping Breath healing amp. And that is the end of Yu'lon. This is a much more simple cooldown. There's less things to do on the setup, and there's also less things to keep track of during the actual rotation. It is also, again, always run with Gift of the Celestial, so you don't have to worry about which version you're running. It's always going to be the same, since we only ever pick Gift. And that brings us to the end of this video. I hope that this was helpful, and if you guys have any comments or questions, feel free to hit me up on Twitch, Discord, or in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.